Hello and welcome once again to the motoring mecca that we so humbly call Four Wheels Good. And on a packed show today, we'll be peering into the world of Formula Ford through the expert eye of Richard Warren and taking a spin in another Ferrari supercar with classic car yearbook author John Stanley. But first, over to Spain, where we ran into Dr. David Hay, one of our many regular viewers who was holidaying out there. And when he found out what we were testing on España, we couldn't resist letting him drive the Seat Ibiza TDi.
Everybody knows about the great Golf TDi. It's a superb car with plenty of punch. Well, there's a new competitor on the market that you may not know about. It's this. It's the Seat Ibiza. It's fairly plain in design. A standard European small car. But you can't get away from the impressive image we now have of the TDi's sister, the Cupra Sport, which has been making its mark in the world of rallying recently. Inside, well, it's fairly nondescript. As you'd expect, the dials are easily visible, the knobs and buttons are all fairly accessible, and with the inclusion of a neat stereo, you feel your life has been made that little bit easier. And of course, we mustn't forget the power steering and the air conditioning. Less and less of a luxury these days, more of a necessity. The driver's seat is fully adjustable. There's plenty of headroom. However, I did find that after a 3-hour continuous drive, the lumbar region of my back began to ache slightly. Well, that's a bit harsh maybe. You do find this with many cars in this class. It wasn't exactly the TARDIS, but it did surprise me how much I managed to fit in the boot. One area that I really enjoyed was the brute power that lies beneath the deceptively understated lines of this vehicle. It's not quite a wolf in sheep's clothing, but it does have the bite. Overtaking is no problem. When the turbo kicks in, you sail effortlessly past the longest of lorries in seconds. When it comes to cornering, I want the best. I took the Ibiza around some pretty contorted hill roads in northwest Spain, and it didn't let me down. The brakes were precise and efficient. They did their job. In summary, I liked this car. It did what I wanted, when I wanted it. However, with an engine like that, I would hope that it would look a bit more like it drives. Well, I said at the beginning I thought this was a great competitor for the VW, and now that I've put it through its paces, I'm absolutely certain. Of course, it's got a problem, and that's VW's reputation. But I'm telling you, this car is going to have a hell of a reputation in the future too.
Dr. David Hay there, a viewer with a passion. Now, have you ever wondered where the likes of Villeneuve, Hill and the rest of them started their professional racing careers? Well, they certainly didn't start in Formula One. No, it seems that Formula Ford is the real motor racing proving ground, and here's Richard Warren.
Well, here we are at Snetterton Race Circuit, where we're following behind the scenes, of course, with the Formula Ford Championship and watching how the drivers and teams are preparing for the next round of the championship. We'll be talking to both teams and drivers about their chances for winning this year's championship, and also just finding out exactly why it's very important for any single-seater driver to start their career in Formula Ford. And one of the youngest drivers doing this year's Slick 50 Formula Ford Championship is young Earl Goddard, only 17, and he's actually the son of Fred Goddard. Now, obviously, has that really helped you with the championship this year, coming from a famous motor racing family?
Yes, that has. I've had a lot of people to speak to and go to for advice, to use their experience to my advantage in the championship, and hopefully it all works out for the best.
Fred, how do you feel about your son going into motorsport and following in your footsteps?
Well, it wasn't really what I would like him to do, because if he'd played tennis or golf or something, I could afford a lot of golf balls, a lot of tennis balls. But being that he's now chosen this way to go, and I suspect that almost being born in the pits at Kailami would have had a lot to do with it, I shall give him all my support and try to let him have the best of it.
Because funny enough, he's an all-round sportsman, isn't he? He's been involved in rugby and a few other sports, and obviously I suppose a career as an All Black would be quite a nice profession to follow.
Well, yeah, he's been very good at all ball sports, and I thought that's the way he was going to go, and then suddenly out of the blue he said he wants to have a go at motor racing. So we thought give him a chance, and he is now starting to get quite good, so maybe that's the way he's going to end up going. Maybe he'll be rich one day.
So are you very hopeful he will actually turn out to be quite good and hopefully get into Formula 1?
Well, he was quite good in karting. In fact, he was very good in karting. And whether it's Formula 1, I don't rightly know, but maybe Indy cars, I don't know. We just have to wait and see.
Are you finding problems this year with sponsorship or not?
Yeah, as in karts, struggled to find a budget for a full season. This year we haven't been too bad. We found money to keep us going just on a basic budget, no major testing, just the toolkit tests and then racing. So the limited testing hasn't helped me too much due to not getting miles in the car, but I'm coping all right and going to be there.
So obviously you're just doing the sort of lower division championship this year. Next year you plan to move up to the Premier League or Premier Division as they call it?
Yeah, this year we've been doing the first division, which is for year-old cars or older, and next year we're hoping to move up into Premier. Just let me get some miles and some experience this year and then move up next year into the Class A.
The car's changed a lot, and the formula's become a lot more technical than it's. I think, although it's still a junior formula, it's perhaps not the formula that a driver would come into for his first year from karts. The dampers, the data loggers, the various components on the car. A lot more is asked of the driver now, but then he has to give a lot more when he gets higher up the ladder. So he may as well start learning at this stage.
So obviously you're saying that the championship has improved over the years and become a bit more technical now, but obviously we've got two actual choices in the championship. We've got a junior driver and the Premier Division. Does that mean a lot of difference from a team point of view or not?
The main difference is that Ford decided that the first division, as it's called, for cars that are a year old, was mainly aimed at sort of private entries as opposed to team entries. So it's a lower budget required to do it, but it's a way of sort of showing your ability on a smaller amount of money, and maybe winning a place in a Premier Division team the following year.
And if you want to experience action at the top level of Formula Ford and meet the drivers who may one day be Formula 1 champions, then catch up with Richard at Brands Hatch, and that will be in 2 weeks' time on Four Wheels Good. That's it for part one, though. Join us in part two when John Stanley will be driving the Ferrari 550 and we'll be visiting the world of inside motors. See you then. Welcome back. Now, John Stanley, classic motor mind and author of the Classic Car Yearbook, has been driving us green with envy week on week. And yes, you've guessed it, he's at it again, this time behind the wheel of the fantastic Ferrari 550.
Some years ago, I wrote a large book on culture and classical music and architecture. It covered 900 years. And although it was a large task, it was fascinating because it gave an overview. At the end, what one realized was not only was the history-rich texture, but that the important designs and the important themes reoccurred. Whenever something significant was wanted, people reverted to that which was comfortable, that which was understood. Even at the end of last century, where they were fundraising for the individual railways, the railway stations of the time were built like palaces, simply because that way they looked substantial and would persuade investors to put money in. We need our design signals. And this is the case too with the automotive industry. And nobody, absolutely nobody, is better than Pininfarina and the combination with Ferrari when it comes to picking and using the themes. Beside me, I have two absolute classics. One has borrowed from the other, and both represent the same high standard. Let's look. This car follows in the footsteps of the famous short wheelbase 250 GT. It had virtually the same wheelbase and the same V12 Colombo engine, along with many, many racing lessons learnt from the fabulous P275. The gearbox, the independent rear suspension, they came from the Le Mans winning 250 LM, which anyone who's been to Coys will see and will relish. There are also family ties to classics like the great GTO and the fabulous P3s and P4s, which certainly are on my wall. All this, and the Daytona as its offspring, makes this everything that is sacred. With the new E-Type on the market and the upstart Lamborghinis threatening Ferrari, it was critical that they shone with their new car. Ferrari's answer was at the 1965 Paris show with this V12 engine, which was opened up from 3 to 3.3 litres, and the Pininfarina design, which is this 275. It had all the classic looks. It had the drooped nose, it had the hunched good looks here, it was the wraparound window, it had the cut spoiler. And above all, it had this wonderful, powerful, tolerant engine, which in its initial form was 290 brake horse at about 7,500 revs. The standard car used 3 twin choke Webers, and there was an option of 6 smaller ones. This Ferrari was the first that had a 5-speed road-going gearbox, because before that they'd used overdrives, and it was placed aft in order to copy the current fashion from Alfa and Porsche. There were oval chassis struts which were tricky to restore and weren't always as stiffer as one would have hoped, particularly in the competition or the Spider versions. Early cars would reach about 160, but the poor disc brakes and the initial aerodynamic troubles with the nose lifting resulted in the 1966 long-nosed Mark II, which had a larger rear window and it had exposed hinges and it had split fuel tanks. Then, in between 66 and 68, just 360 glorious GTB4s were built. They were based on the Mark II, and they used a 300 horsepower engine and 4 cams. This was a peak of engineering, and with 8,000 revs and nearly 170 miles an hour, it was designed for race, but it was wonderful on the road. Needless to say, inside a classic like this, you have all the period features. You have plenty of chrome, plenty of leather, plenty of period feel. It is truly a pure driving machine. Even the name GTB is GT for Grand Touring and Berlinetta for the body. The 275, as was Ferrari's wont, was actually the size of each cylinder capacity, and the 4, of course, was the 4 cams. This same wooden steering wheel was used on the race cars. There was nothing different. The steering is wonderfully light, it's responsive. You can throw it around and it tells you exactly what it's doing. The rear gearbox also helps because the balance obviously is there, but really as a drive car, the low idle, the fact that 2,500 revs you've got action, made it glorious. The gears are tricky. They're on the other side, it's one of those gates. However, it is a sustained rhythm if you can get it. They're close ratios, and the instant shutdown with these 4 cams means that if you get it wrong, it doesn't feel at all sweet. If you get it right, you feel the most wonderful driver on the roads. This is the brand new Ferrari flagship. It replaces the Testarossa 512, the huge, powerful, old mid-engine V12. They've reverted now to the classic V12 front engine as they had in the 275's days, and deserted what they started as a family with the Boxer. This, as a result, is more practical, it is more comfortable, it has more luggage space, and it is much faster. The aluminium body is set over a tubular steel frame sandwiched by a composite material which permits welding between different metals. The bumpers and the wheel arches are also composites, which is a wise move on a bodywork this expensive. The skillful Pininfarina styling has side vents from the old GTO, classic small roof, the hunches, everything about the long bonnet, the cut-off tail is reminiscent of the 275. It is all part of the tradition. It is taller and more practical as a body. The styling is rather more modern than the Testarossa was, but little things like the windows that drop and then go up, just as they do on some of the modern saloons, ensure a tight seal and a quieter machinery. It has a 485 brake horse 5.5 litre engine. It's a development of the 2+2 456 GT. It is tilted, and the V12 has 4 valves and it has 4 overhead cams, just as the 275 did. They wind tunnel tested this car for 4,800 hours, and as a result the underside is virtually fully flared in. The whole thing is slipstreamed even underneath. It has electrically controlled seating, it has 6 CD auto changer, full air con, power steering. There are various speeds and clever tricks all over the place. The seating, everything about it is comfort, but it's very, very fast. This car will do 200 miles an hour, and it will do it in a delightful way. You won't know the speed you're doing, you just know you are driving the Ferrari flagship. The interior, as you would expect, is beautifully trimmed. There is luggage space, complete with luggage straps behind you. There is the classic Ferrari open gate. But underneath it all, there is a sense of confidence. There are huge, huge brakes that are ventilated and drilled and won't fade on you. There is a suspension that can be flicked from sports to regular roadwork so that whatever speed you're doing, you feel safe. It is a well-balanced car. It is everything you'd expect at the top end. It is, of course, the 550 Maranello. So here we are, 2 beautiful cars. On the one side we have the period classic V12, and on the other we have the brand new modern front engine V12. I don't know which one, they're just works of art. I think maybe I'll just watch.
That's it for John and Ferraris for a few weeks, but he will be back soon for a classic car special. Now it's time once again to wing our way over to John Wright and Inside Motors. Take it away, John.
Are there any other little bits that we ought to just keep pliers?
Another essential part of the kit is probably a set of pliers. Now, any good toolkit wouldn't be complete without the old trusty plier set. Now, various types, again, various manufacturers, various shapes, sizes and forms. I think the important thing with any hand tool is if it feels comfortable. If it doesn't feel comfortable, then obviously don't buy it. But what we try to do with these is give them a cushioned grip. So if you're using these things all day, they feel nice in your hands. They're nicely balanced, they're well made, well manufactured, and they do the job.
You've got them in your hands. Let me have a play with these. They are super. I like that. I do like that. You're right. It just feels right. The thing about tools is they're almost sexual, aren't they?
Well, whatever turns you on, really is. But they are. I mean, people pick up a tool, and it's a very personal thing. It's something that somebody uses all day, and it needs to be right. If it's not right, you're not going to feel happy using it. So you've got pliers, you've got things like side cutters. There are long nose pliers, needle nose pliers as they call, which is obviously just with a sharp pointy end on the end, just to get at awkward objects. Side cutters for cutting wires, cables, anything really.
Oh, the ubiquitous cable tie.
Yeah, the infamous cable tie. But again, if it feels right, then it's the right tool for you.
One thing I've noticed over there now is a box to put it all in.
Well, I mean, that always helps. I mean, there's most garages, and certainly my garage, there's tools scattered all over the floor. And of course, when you come to use them the next time, you can't find them. So, again, depending on how much you've got in your pocket, there are various sizes of toolbox, starting off with a very little basic one. Something like this comes with a little tray. So you can put your sockets in it across the top, all your ratchets, all the stuff that you'd probably use the most, and all your extensions. And then you can put your bigger bits and pieces on the bottom, things like your oil filter tools, your bigger screwdrivers, your pliers, even your hacksaw maybe. And then you have the beauty of being able to shut the lid and lock it up.
We'll see John again next week. That's all from Four Wheels Good today. Next week we'll be learning how to drive fast and safely around the circuit at Snetterton Park and seeing how prisoners in America are restoring some classic cars. See you then.